I am being watched. Welcome everyone to Melfuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Person of Interest, Season 3, Episode 4. It's called Reasonable Doubt. So, spoilers for the episode as always. This is kind of a weird episode, and I think it's mostly entertaining. I think it's especially fun, probably for the first half or so, just because it kind of does a good job of keeping you on your toes. It feels like it kind of almost takes the idea of person of interest, which is used a lot at the start of the show, which is we have the person of interest and we don't know if they're the perpetrator or the victim. This episode takes that and sort of spins it into overdrive, where it really convolutes the idea of like, okay, did this woman kill her husband? There's a lot of evidence to suggest that she did, and she's doing a lot of things going on the run, which makes her look more guilty. But there's also a lot of other weird details, and the crew have to kind of try and decide if she is worth helping or they're the one they have to stop. I think that's interesting. I also quite like the ending, actually. I think the ending is a decent little idea. But I think it does get too convoluted in the back half. I think by the time they actually get the woman Vanessa and sit her down, and it's Reese, Finch, and Carter effectively giving her a trial, and there's a lot of court talk in this episode because she's an ex-lawyer. But I think once it gets to that point, it started to lose me a little bit, and I wasn't as interested anymore in like whether or not she did do it or didn't do it, or what the truth was. And then by the time we get the reveal that she was lying and she actually effectively played the entire team machine, well, not Shaw. Shaw was convinced she was a killer from the start. She should have won that bet that she tried to set up with Finch. Although Finch is too civilized to bet on whether someone is innocent or guilty. But I think that chunk of the episode, once it gets to that point, I think the couple of problems with it is that, for one, it feels like we're in a room a long time just talking to her at a table. It's cutting back and forth to some other things going on, but it did feel like that was a large chunk of her plot once we got there. But mostly it was just, I think once they started talking about how the husband's got ties to like having debt with a gangster, and that might be why he'd want to fake his death. The revelation that he was still alive was probably the most predictable part of the episode. Of course he was going to be alive. They never found a body. But there were so many layers on top, and like if they die under mysterious circumstances, their money goes to this charity, but that money's been cleared out. Oh, it turns out the husband's not dead, and the second signature on that charity account is actually another alias of him. That said, though, as much as I'm kind of nitpicking at why I don't think I was enjoying it as much in the second half, I do think there's a lot of fun little moments in here. I think Carter gets a lot of time here to sort of be a main part of the team, which is nice. She feels like she's even more involved than she's ever been. I think the real standout here is the combination of Fusco and Shaw. The scene at the bank where they're waiting for the old man who's struggling to use his computer to give them some information is very funny. And Shaw losing the will to live over the course of the scene, and then eventually trying to pick up the letter opener to stab him, and Fusco swooping in to stop her and saying that she can't do it, was really funny to me. Like, I'm really enjoying that. I mean, Shaw's got a lot of good stuff in this episode. It's funny, like, Shaw, in a lot of ways, has kind of become, for the most part, a comic relief character, at least early on in the season. Now, I'm sure there might be some other meaty stuff with her down the line, but for these last few episodes, she's been cracking me up something fierce. Between this scene with Fusco and then the entire scene where she goes to infiltrate a book club meeting, where, again, she says, hey, I'll go and pretend to be one of the friends, and Finch immediately says, are you sure you'll fit in, Miss Shaw? And she's like, yep. And she basically just brings booze, and that's what solves it. What got me, though, wasn't so much that part of it. It was the fact that after they discovered that this best friend of the person of interest was having an affair with the husband who's supposedly dead at this point, once she finds that out after looking through her phone and computer, and she's talking to Finch for a bit in private, Shaw comes back out and just pulls out her gun and says, hey, you were having an affair with this guy. She may be coming to kill you. And then she sits down casually, sips the wine, picks up the book and says, so what's the book about? The way she said, what's the book about, also made me laugh. So Shaw's just like a crowd pleaser right now. She's just doing lots of little funny little things. and even the pissing contest over who's like Bear's favorite. You know, when Reese walks in at one point in this episode and the dog leaves her and goes over to Reese, and just the little evil glare she gives him, like, how dare you, you son of a bitch. Not to the dog, to Reese. She's mad at Reese for taking the dog's affection from her. Yeah. Oh, speaking of Bear, the entire opening, the cold open of this episode is, it looks like Bear's at the vet, and they're, you know, Reese and Finch look worried about him, and they're like, oh, he has the odd table scrap and whatnot, but, you know, do whatever it takes. Like, you know, all of Finch's income is disposable here. We'll save Bear no matter the cost. But it turns out they're actually there for a case. And this is something that I actually really appreciate, because the show's not done it that much. There's been a few key episodes where they've done like there's like a joke number because the main plot's not dealing with a number. Particularly when Reese was in like prison, or like there was the episode where Fusco was the one dealing with the number on his own whilst everything else was going on. They've had a couple of little jokey ones, or even in the season finale where they do the whole joke where it's just at the wedding and Reese and Shaw pull up and just quickly solve it and move on. It does make sense. There's a lot of smaller ones that are simpler, right? And we don't see them that often. So I kind of appreciate that we can start an episode at the end of like an off-camera one where we just come in right at the very end of the story, and it's just like a little joke here about how even Bear was in the mission. Like, Bear was faking being sick so they could be here to protect the vet, because some guys were planning on robbing the drugs at the veterinary clinic. So I thought that was a fun open. Like, it was just feel good vibes all around. There was nothing to dislike about it. So, but once we get to the meat of the episode, though, a lot of it very much is, and I think this is where the first half kind of does succeed almost in keeping me interested, is because at first it seems quite simple. This woman was on a yacht with her husband. The husband went missing, and now he's presumed dead. And they go to check her out, as like they do every other person of interest, where Reese is following her. But the spin here, the twist of this episode, which does make it different, is that before he even gets to make first contact with her, police roll in and arrest her for the murder. And if anything, like, I'd almost argue that I kind of would have liked an episode where it was just a case of how do we protect someone who's already in the system and is going to be like away from us. We can't get to her. The best we can do is have Fusco use his police privileges to like spy on her, which he does a little bit early on when she's like in the interrogation room. But I could have seen a whole episode of just like, how do we deal with that as an issue? Like, how do we get to her? Especially if the threat's going to be from like within the prison system or something like that, or a corrupt cop's going to kill her when she's already like being detained. It's almost a little disappointing in some ways that she ends up like going on the run. As much as the way she goes on the run and escapes the police station is quite fun, she basically asks for a lawyer who looks similar to her, and then she walks out after she knocks out the other lawyer. So it's not until Fusco goes into the interrogation room and finds her like stripped and like on the floor unconscious that he realizes she's pulled a switcheroo. I mean, that's pretty fun and over the top. And the episode continues with going over the top, and that she's got contacts from being a lawyer in like the criminal underworld. She goes to see this drug dealer she knows. When the police have her cornered in the building, Carter tries to talk to her on the roof, and she jumps off into the back of the I'll just say garbage truck. It's the American way of saying it. I was trying to think, what do we call that? Because we had just say the binmen are coming. We don't really have a name for the vehicle. The bin lorry? Is that what we call it? This really cements this as a pulpy episode to me. The switcheroo is already pretty pulpy, but I think her jumping off the roof and perfectly landing in the back of the truck and being okay because she lands in some bin bags and some like, cardboard boxes, that's very cliche in action movie stuff, right? It's the sort of thing where it takes you out of a little bit because it's not that grounded. It feels like, oh, this is just a silly movie trope. But that's okay if that's what the episode's going to be. And arguably, again, the switcheroo at the police station with how she pulled that off is very kind of cheesy movie, not grounded in reality in any way. Not that I would say this show is typically a super grounded and gritty affair, but like I'd say it doesn't feel quite as pulpy as this most of the time. This is a little step further than it normally does. So, and I was having more or less fun with that. I think all of this early stuff where she's going around, she plants cocaine on the guy who's the witness who was clearly paid off to make her look guilty. And I think once we actually get to the nitty gritty of what's going on here, and they spend some time tracking her, and like Shaw does like a walk through the bus station or the train station, wherever she was. They go through some steps that are fun to watch them go through. And then we have the book club and all the other stuff that I mentioned. I think by the time we get to the point where it's like, oh no, she is actually a very good liar. And we kind of show that by having Carter find a photograph of her husband that they gave her when they were interrogating her, and she's like scratched out the eyes. That felt also very kind of cheesy and cliche to me. Like, this woman was able to convince all three of our main characters that she is not guilty. She convinced them that she does love her husband. She convinced them that she didn't know about the affair with the best friend. All these different things. And Carter specifically points out, though, that they gave her that photo before she found out about these things, and we told her a lot of the details, implying that she already hated him and wanted him dead before then. So the reveal is that this couple were faking their deaths together so they could run away with all this money from charity. So they're both bad guys. But the husband double-crossed her and paid off some people to make it look like she had murdered him to put her away in prison so he could get away with the best friend character, with the woman he's having the affair with. The way this is all revealed, there's a lot of information to get through, and then there's a lot of information to twist, to make the twist work. This is where it got less fun. It just kind of felt convoluted. The photograph being scratched out just felt like, wait, she went through all this effort, she's so good at lying, but she left this behind for them to find. It's just a little bit too in the cheesy side for me to completely buy into. I did appreciate the very end of the episode, though. Even though, although another complaint I have is that Reese believes her so much that when he's seen her off at the bus station, she mentions that she's scared, and he hands her a handgun and puts it in her purse and says, "Hey, that'll make you feel better." And this annoyed me even in the moment, even before this was before the reveal. And maybe it's just because I knew there was like 7-8 minutes of the episode left, so I knew there had to be more to it. I still felt this was like weird for him to make this choice to give her the gun. I just didn't feel like she'd earned that trust to me as an audience member. So maybe there's just a bit of a disconnect with how the character's viewing this guest character than what the audience is. I think the audience, I don't think at this point in the episode trusts her. Or at least I didn't. I certainly still felt like something was up in the air. But Reese was like, no, here's a handgun. And part of me was thinking, oh, maybe this is a bluff. Maybe he's giving her a gun with blanks because he suspects she's going to do something badly, or maybe she'll do something stupidly or whatever. But instead, you know, that's just that he gave her a fully working pistol, and that's going to lead to, you know, what happens at the end. That said, though, I did like the final this choice that Reese makes, which is that when she is on the yacht, she's found her husband who's alive and well. She's got him at gunpoint. The husband tries to play it off like, oh, you were meant to meet me yesterday, but everything's fine. And she's like, no, you were having an affair. You tried to make it look like I killed you. Reese comes in and just gives a second handgun on the table, the implication being that the husband should have one too, and explains that I try to stop bad things from happening. I'm not so sure what's about to happen here is really that bad for anyone else. The idea just being that these two are both awful people, and if they take each other out, that's probably better for everyone. It's kind of a cold, like, I'm not going to get in the middle of this. Both of you are pieces of shit. I kind of like that ending. You know, the episode just ends with the gunshots coming from the yacht, so we don't know exactly who won, or maybe both of them are dead. Who knows? But they're both bastards. They both conspired to do all this in the first place. One double-crossed the other. It really does feel like an interesting premise of an episode that, oh, maybe this is just a case of they're just both scumbags and we shouldn't really be helping either of them. It's an interesting thing to float, especially since we've dealt with episodes before about Reese does try and help people, even people with flawed backgrounds, but this isn't flawed backgrounds. This is two people who are constantly scheming, and even their own marriage feels like kind of a sham in a lot of ways, based on what we hear about it. Even the husband says our marriage was just a contract. And it does leave some of the other elements of the episode feeling like it was mostly kind of a red herring / waste of time. There's a whole like detective character who's hunting her, who really wants to arrest her. And I think this is playing into like the husband knows that this guy will want to arrest her because he's got a vendetta against her because he had like a big case. I mean, we find out that this detective is not with HR, but he's maybe dirty in a more traditional sense, in the sense that he's just an asshole cop who's racist and who's mad that his case got thrown out because this lawyer did her job well and got the case thrown out, or maybe it was the opposite way around. I can't even remember. This is the thing. There's so many details about the backstory of the main characters in this episode that I'm having trouble actually keeping them all in mind. But that was kind of the gist of what they were saying. But there's a lot of focus on him at the start, like being happy that he's arrested her and sort of throwing it in her face. And then there's a lot of stuff with him throughout the episode, like with a lot of uniformed cops hunting her. And they kind of like do that. It does lead to a fun moment though, actually, where they've basically sent the police to a decoy location, which turns out to be like a secret illegal gambling ring. And Carter's like sitting with Finch after this all goes down and they hear it over the police radio. And she's like, wait, you just happened to set them into a place with a gambling ring. He's like, well, yeah, I'm just doing my due diligence, the making sure that this illegal enterprise was taken down. So I made sure that they would find it. He's like, so you just put her car in this location so that they'd leave it there. And Finch's response, I did love this, which is, oh no, I didn't do that. Mr. Reese took care of that. I thought that was a funny line. But see, even in the back half of the episode that I wasn't as into, I was all these other little moments from the main group that were sprinkled in, I did enjoy quite a bit. But there's a whole. I felt like should have been. No, it's not even. I don't even know what I wanted from this character, honestly. Given where the episode goes, it just kind of felt like by the end, I look back at that character, and they set up that he's a bit of an asshole, and it never really goes to anything. I guess I just felt like there could have been a bit more to it with that, but it's so heavily focused on the first half of the episode because in the first half of the episode, it's this woman on the run, and the question that's being asked of everyone is, did she or did she not kill her wife, kill her husband? And the back half of the episode, to try and make it more exciting, I guess, makes it so convoluted what's actually going on that we can't just enjoy the simple question of did she or did she not kill her husband. The more convoluted you make the answers to that simple question in like a murder mystery, I feel like robs it of any of the weight that the question initially had. So by the end, I don't really care what they were doing, I guess. So yeah, not super into the plot of this episode, but where it ultimately goes, even though I do think the first half was at least fun in a pulpy way of keeping me on my toes because it kept kind of shaking things up. But I guess it just kind of kept that mantra for too long to the point where instead of giving me more interesting, crazy situations that the character found herself in, where maybe our team could have got involved as the episode went on, instead it kind of just got really convoluted with what the actual answers were. And that was less exciting to me. So I guess I should also mention as well that Carter's partner, obviously I suspected he was working for HR. He is. Notably, he's like right around the corner. It's a really good moment, actually. I thought this was well captured in the scene, the way it was directed. Is Carter talks to Reese after one of the earlier crime scene moments, and she comes around the corner and her partner is right there. Like he's standing just there. He clearly must have heard at least a little bit of this conversation. And it's just really selling the idea that he is suspicious to us, the audience. He thinks he's gaining Carter's trust as he tells the other cop, attorney, but well, we'll see where this goes. So the show has made it explicit to us that he can't be trusted now with this episode. Not too much more than that. She does refer to Reese as her boyfriend, which she doesn't correct him on because that's a convenient lie or excuse for who he is. But yeah, not much to say about that yet, but we'll see where it goes. This wasn't a bad episode though, by any means. It was a lot of fun stuff in it. It's just the main plot ultimately was a bit of a mess as far as the backstory goes as it went on. So I didn't enjoy that as much. So yeah, I'll see you next time for episode 5 of season 3. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments. Of course, you can support the content over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and help keep all the reviews coming. I wouldn't be able to do this without Patreon and YouTube memberships and all that other good stuff. Any support in any way is very, very much appreciated. So thank you very much for joining me. I do appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla.